When they see you, they gon' see me. An accomplice we will be. We will be one love. We gon' last forever, babe. One love. I don't want another lover, babe.
Hey, it's Sasha and Alea. Say hi. Back with another story time. So this story time is gonna be a combination of labor and delivery and how all of that went down and how it felt in the process and all of that. But I'm also gonna add in the part where I attempted to give Alea up for adoption because it does roll into this. In my last video, I kept saying how me and my parents' relationship wasn't good and we didn't, we was always arguing. So part of that was me and my mom would always go back and forth as to how I would take care of Alea, because at the time she kept telling me to give Alea up for adoption because she thought that was the best thing for me to do. And, you're gonna be throwing away your whole childhood. You're not gonna be able to do the things that you want to do that other kids do, and you still have to go to school, and everything is gonna be harder for you. And I'm on the other end like, no, I want to keep her, I'm gonna get a job. So basically everything I said, she had something to contradict what I said. So like I would say, oh, I want to keep her, and then she would say, oh no, you need to give her up for adoption. And then I'd be like, oh, I can get a job so I can support her. And then my mom's gonna be like, well, how are you gonna get a job? Who's gonna drive you? All of that stuff. And I would always try to find a way like, oh, I could take a bus, and she just stuck by what she said in the first place. She thought that I should give Alea up for adoption. Since my mother had convinced me to give Alea up for adoption, we went and found an adoption agency. I signed papers. She talked to us saying what could happen. I have 30 days after she leaves the hospital to change my mind. So she was giving us all the information, giving us a rundown, and then I ended up looking through a whole bunch of books of parents and people who want to adopt babies, and I ended up picking out a family. I ended up meeting with them. I ended up talking with them. I asked them questions. They asked me questions, and at that time I was really determined to give Alea up for adoption because I was like, okay, this is gonna be better for me. I'm gonna be able to get a new start. I don't have to raise a baby as a teenager, and everything's gonna be good. But little did I know. So that's basically what was happening through the whole entire pregnancy. Was we were going through the adoption and going through the whole entire process. So the due date that they had originally gave me when I got my first ultrasound was December 11th, but then later on during the pregnancy they were like, oh, you look like your due date is going to be December 5th. So that was the new due date that they had gave me. So as I'm sitting there in fourth period, the pains to me are just unbearable. So I try to put my head down and get some rest because sometimes when I go to sleep, the pain goes away. But it's not. I'm trying to find a comfortable spot, but I'm feeling the pain everywhere. I'm feeling it up here, my lower back, my lower abdomen, and I don't know what to do. So I'm crying, but it's not loud where everybody in the classroom can notice. But if you're close to me, you can hear me sniffling. You can probably see the tears running down my eyes. And I hear the teacher up there talking about me like, oh, all you kids want to go to sleeping in my class, and that's fine, but once you take the HSA, and he was just going on because I put my head down. I was the only one with my head down, and he wanted to talk about me like I wasn't right there listening to him. I basically just had to deal with that pain for the rest of the period. I didn't care what he said. I wasn't just gonna walk out though because I knew he was gonna say something, maybe like email my parents for walking out his class. So I just sat there and took the pain. A whole day, it was just painful. I was trying to lay down. I didn't tell my parents about the pain though because I didn't want them to worry, or I didn't want them to be like, oh my goodness, you're having a baby, we have to go to the hospital right now. So I was just like, you know what, I'll just deal with it. I go to bed around 9, 10 something, and I can't go to sleep because the pains are now like every 5 minutes, but I can't keep track. I'm not keeping track because I don't know whether or not it's my contractions, and I just don't care. The only thing I care about is how do I make these pains go away. So I wake up because I can't go to sleep, and it's like 11 something, and I'm up downstairs and I'm texting somebody. I'm like, bro, my stomach hurts so bad, I just want this to be over, and I'm crying. So I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna go to bed and try to sleep this off, and hopefully that the pains will be gone by tomorrow. I'm laying in bed. Mind you, it's been a couple hours and I'm still not asleep. I'm laying in my bed and I have a pillow in between my legs to try to make myself feel more comfortable. and I'm just laying there, tears running down my eyes, and all of a sudden it feels like I peed myself, and I'm like and I open my eyes, and I just lay there for a couple seconds like, no way, did my water just break? And I didn't want to stand up and have it all come out just in case it was my water, but I didn't want to just lay there at the same time. So I got up, and I don't want to put too much information out there, but you know when you squeeze your vagina and like to make nothing come out, to make like your pee stop, that's what I did. I squeezed my vagina to make sure that nothing came out, and I walked slowly to the bathroom, and as soon as I sat on the toilet, it came out. Like it basically just feels like you're peeing yourself, but you can't stop it. Like I tried to stop it because it just felt weird. Like it just felt like I'd been holding in my pee for like a million years, and it just decided to all come out at one time, and it was a lot, and it was coming out fast, and I was like, oh my goodness, my water just broke, and I'm about to have a baby. And mind you, it's like 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. So I get in the bathtub with no lower body clothes on, and I'm standing there with a towel around myself because it's still dripping down my leg, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? They're sleeping, but I'm about to have a baby. So I still have the towel around myself, and I go knock on my parents' door. I knock one time and nobody answers, so I'm like, okay, I knock again, and all I hear is yes. So I'm like, I think my water just broke, and I don't hear anything at all. So I'm just like, okay. So I go back into the bathroom, and I stand in the bathtub with a towel still around myself, and then the door opens, and my mom comes out, and she's just like, what? You said what? And I'm like, Mom, my water just broke. And then I'm like, look, it's running down my leg and everything. So she goes back in there, and then later on my dad comes out like a couple seconds later or a couple minutes later, and he's like, oh well, I guess it's time for you guys to go get ready. And you know, my mom's in there rushing. She's like brushing her teeth, getting everything together, and she's panicking because it's so unexpected for me to go into labor now. So I already have my diaper bag ready. I'm ready to get going because these pains, I want to get an epidural. So we get in the car, and at this point these pains are coming every minute, every 2 minutes, and mind you, we have to drive to Baltimore in order to get this baby out of me. But it was like 1:30 in the morning, so there were no cars around. Basically we got there in like 10-15 minutes. So we're driving, and I'm just sitting there like and then my mom's in, she's driving, and she's in the seat next to me. She's like, Sasha, can you please stop? You're scaring me. So I'm like, but I'm thinking, you know, I'm thinking it's a little funny because she's scared and I'm not. And so I'm trying to keep the noise down because she's panicking a little bit. But I'm still like, and you know, I'm like, please turn up the music because I need something to distract me. So we end up getting at the hospital at like 2 o'clock in the morning. The only person in there is the security guard. And I'm just there with my hospital bag waiting for somebody to come down and escort us to the room. So finally somebody comes down to get us. We go upstairs. I go into this room and I change into this little gown thing that the people give you. I had to go into the bathroom and change. I used the bathroom and all of that, clean myself up because the amniotic fluid was still dripping down. My pants were wet, my underwear was wet, but I had to get naked anyways because I was about to give birth. And then I went back into the room where my mom was waiting, and I laid on the bed. And then a couple minutes later, these doctors come in. Basically, not to get into too much detail, but basically they explain everything to me. They tell me what an epidural is. They tell me how the process is gonna go. They check to see how dilated I am. And at that time, I was like 3 centimeters dilated. They hooked me up. They put this thing on my stomach so that they can hear my contractions, see my contractions. And the contractions were painful because when they were talking and the contractions came up, I would always close my eyes and take deep breaths, and they would stop talking for me. And that's basically what was going on. A little while later, they rolled me into the labor and delivery room where I actually delivered the baby. And the nurse came in, she explained everything to me. I couldn't eat anything. The only thing I can drink was water. So she gave me a big cup of water. She gave my mom water. You know, my mom's just sitting in the chair. She explains everything to us, and then she leaves. So, you know, it's early in the morning. I hadn't got no sleep, so I'm trying to sleep. But I'm still having these pains every couple minutes. And so the nurse comes back in and she's like, you know, do you want us to give you an epidural? You're in pain. Are you sure you don't want it right now? And I'm just so scared because I've been hearing stories like if you jump or you move when they put the needle in your back, you can be paralyzed. So I'm just like, oh, no, I'm just gonna wait to have the epidural. Why would I even do that? So I'm telling her I'm gonna wait to have the epidural. And then later on, you know, these pains are just, I'm crying and I'm like, Mom, but it hurts so much. And she's laughing at me and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this hurts. And she's like, do you want me to call the nurse? Are you sure you don't want the epidural now? And then after a little while, I'm just like, yes, can you please call her in because I'm ready to take this now. The nurse and some other doctors come in and they tell me about this whole process. They tell me like, oh, you know, this is gonna be quick and easy. It shouldn't hurt that much. You know, we're just gonna put the needle in and after that you shouldn't feel anything. So I'm so scared. So I get up and I sit at the edge of the bed. Ooh. I sit at the edge of the bed and I'm so scared. So he's like, sit up straight, and I'm sitting up straight. So, and then the doctor's behind me, and then my mom's in front of me, and the nurse is in front of me, and my leg is shaking. I don't know why my leg is shaking. I can't stop it. Maybe it's because I'm cold. Maybe it's because I'm scared, but I don't know. So I'm sitting there scared, and then he does something with my back, and at first I feel the needle go, and it hurt, but it wasn't that painful. And then after the needle, he put in something else, I believe, into my back, and it was a whole lot of pressure. It was a whole lot of pressure, and I'm not gonna lie, I did shed a couple of tears because that pressure did not feel good. And when he put that in my back, I jumped like that, and he was like, don't move, and I got so scared because I thought I was gonna get paralyzed. But after that, it only took like a couple minutes, and after that I lay back down. I couldn't feel the contractions no more, and I was like, why didn't I get this sooner? I don't know. So they had to hook me up to this thing where, you know, it collects my pee because since I'm numb from the waist down, I can't feel anything, so I can't feel my pee. So they had to hook me up to this thing where it will collect it for me. So maybe a couple hours goes by, I'm trying to get some sleep, you know, my eyes are closed and I'm resting, but I'm not actually asleep because I'm so tired and it's just been a long morning. And so I'm laying there and the nurse comes in again to check on me and to see how dilated I am, and around that time I'm like 7 centimeters dilated, and I'm telling her, I'm like, I have to go poop really bad. And she's like, oh, that's just the pressure of the baby's head pushing down. I don't think you actually have to go poop. And it really felt like I had to go poop, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, can I go use the bathroom? And she's like, oh, we don't want you to go use the bathroom, you know, because just in case it's not actually poop and it's just the pressure, so we could let you go use the bathroom, but we would rather you not, just in case. And so she's like, do you want to go up and use the bathroom? She asked me, she was like, do you want to get up and go use the bathroom, or do you want to just wait it out a little bit? And I'm just like, I think I'm just gonna wait it out a little bit, you know. So she leaves, and then maybe an hour later or so, I'm laying there and I finally just open my eyes, and my mom just sitting across from me, and I'm like, Mom, I had to go poop so bad. And she's laughing at me, and I'm laughing too because I think it's a little funny how all of a sudden I just have to go poop so bad. And I'm just laying there like, Mom, I just have to go poop. And then she's like, do you want me to call the nurse? And I'm like, Mom, what is the nurse gonna do for me? I have to go poop. And then she's just standing there, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I have to poop. And I just keep saying it over and over again. Like she was tired of hearing it. So she's like, okay, I'm just gonna call the nurse. She calls the nurse, and the nurse comes in, and I just tell the nurse, I'm like, I have to go poop really bad. And she was like, okay, we're gonna bring in the lady to see how dilated you are. So she checks to see, and she tells me I'm fully dilated and I'm ready to push. And that's the reason why all of a sudden I feel like I have to go poop. The second the nurses and everybody walked out the door, and it's just me and my mom, I just started gagging. Like, while the nurse was in the room and she was talking, I was starting to get a little bit nauseous. So I asked my mother to give me the water that the nurse had gave me earlier, and I tried to drink a little bit of it, and it didn't help because, you know, I just felt sick out of nowhere. Like, it just came like that. And as soon as she left, I just started gagging, and my mom was like, no, Sasha, hold it in. And the little gown that I had on, she put it over my mouth so that just in case I did throw up, it would be all over my gown. So she was panicking. She was calling the nurses on the side of my bed. She was pressing nurse, and then the nurse came in and she was like, what's wrong? And my mom was like, I don't know, she's about to throw up. And I'm just over there like tears running down my face, my eyes are like this, and I'm just gagging over and over again, and my mom's freaking out because she doesn't know what is going on. And then the nurse is like, oh, that's okay, you know, this usually happens sometimes and everything. So I'm just feel nauseous, and a couple of minutes later I feel a little bit better. So the people come in and they're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. You cannot feel your contractions, and it's time for you to push. So every time we see a contraction come up on the monitor, we're gonna tell you to push really hard. You're gonna take your legs like this. Well, I'm gonna take my knees like this. I have my knees up like that, and my feet were on these little 2 pedal things. So she was like, whenever we tell you to push, you're gonna take a deep breath and push for 10 seconds as hard as you can, like you're taking the biggest poop of your life. And I was like, yes ma'am, and I was listening to her, and I was ready to get this baby out. I was like, yes ma'am, I'm ready. And so the first contraction came on, and I was pushing, and basically I was doing that for the first couple of contractions, and honestly it didn't really feel like anything. For anybody who is wondering what it feels like, if you get an epidural, the only thing you will feel at first is pressure. It won't hurt, but you will feel the pressure as the baby's head is coming out. So let me just demonstrate for y'all. So her head was I was pushing on her head like this, right? And then the real pressure, it like not really pain, but the real pressure I felt was when the sides of her head was coming out, because that's the widest side, and that was the one that I felt the most pressure. So when the side of her head was coming out, that's when I felt the pressure. And as soon as I got around her neck, well, basically when my vagina was wrapped around her neck, they told me to stop pushing. So they were like, all right, this is the last push. So her head was already out and my vagina was wrapped around her neck, and they was like, this is the last push. We need you to push as hard as you can. Like you're taking the biggest poop of your life. Take a deep breath and push your hardest ever, like you never pushed before. And I was like, okay. So they grabbed, I need her again. So the nurses, it was so scary because she was newborn, and she was just so small and fragile. So when I saw them grabbing her head like this, it scared me a little bit, but I was like, I'm not gonna say anything because they know what they're doing. So the nurses grabbed her head like this because it was wrapped around her neck. So they grabbed her like this, and then when my contraction came on, they were like, push really hard, and then they just pulled her out like this. And then when her body was coming out, that's when it hurt. But it was a quick process. They pulled her out by her head, and then when her whole body was coming out, I felt the pain. Like it was like a very sharp pain, but it only lasted for 2 seconds. So yes, it did hurt, but that was it. After she came out, I didn't feel anything else. Now before I had started pushing, one of the ladies asked me if I wanted Alea to be on my chest, or if I wanted them to wipe her off and get all the stuff off first and then put her on my chest. And at first I said I wanted them to wipe her off and clean her off first, but as soon as she came out, they put her on my chest, and I just didn't care. I didn't care that they didn't wipe her off first. I didn't care. Like I started crying because like this human that was inside of me for 9 months is out now. She's on my chest. She's literally a mini me, and I just didn't care. I was crying. I was just in the moment. My mom's over there taking pictures. It was just so crazy, and everybody was like, oh, you know, Sasha, you're a pro at this first time, and it was just crazy. So I did end up tearing just a little bit, but only a tiny bit. For my first time giving birth, I only tore a little bit. So while Alea's laying on my chest, another nurse or doctor down there had to stitch me up. And while I was getting stitched up, I did feel like a tiny like pinch or a tiny sharp feeling, I guess, but that was it because I had epidural, so I couldn't really feel anything. But she was stitching me up and I couldn't really feel anything, and that was basically what happened in the whole process. So, you know, throughout the whole pregnancy, whatever, you know, I'm gonna say the most painful thing is most definitely the contractions. the contractions are most definitely the most painful thing. Other than that, the only other thing that I really didn't like was the morning sickness. Well, not really morning sickness, all day sickness. I just couldn't take it. But the actual giving birth part and pushing the baby out part is like the best, because it didn't hurt. Especially if you get the epidural, you can't feel a thing. So yes, it didn't hurt. For everybody that's asking me, did it hurt, what was the process, that was basically it. So I had her on Wednesday morning, and we got in the hospital at like 2 o'clock, and I ended up having her like 7. So I was only in the hospital for like, I was only in the labor and delivery room for like 5 hours. She was 6 pounds 7 ounces. She was born on November 28th, and everything was just good. So I had to stay in the hospital for the next 2 days. So I left Friday. You know, the next 2 days were good. And since my mom knows that I was so tired, she didn't give me no lip. She changed Alea. She fed Alea. She did everything, especially in the middle of the night. I was so worn out, I couldn't hear a thing. You know, sometimes I would just wake up in the middle of the night and see my mom sitting in a chair feeding Alea, and I'll just be like, I didn't hear a thing. I didn't hear her cry. I didn't hear my mom get up. I didn't hear anything like that. Basically, I was deaf. So since I was going through the adoption process the whole pregnancy, the woman from the adoption agency came to the hospital, and I signed a couple of papers saying that I would give her up for adoption. And on Friday, the person from the adoption agency and also another woman came. And this is when we were leaving, because I stayed in the hospital already for 2 days, and so we were all going home. And since I was going through with the adoption, I couldn't take Alea with me. So the woman from the adoption agency came to bring me the papers so I can sign. And the other woman who came in was the woman who was going to be taking care of Alea. That was basically her job, was to take care of babies and to watch over them between the time period that you leave the hospital and the adopting parents come to take the baby. And guys, when I tell you, when I was leaving the hospital, like not even when I was leaving the hospital, but when the woman came in and brought in the car seat for Alea to take her away, I just lost it. I'm trying to look up at the TV and watch cartoons not to cry, but it's just all coming out, and I just can't breathe, and I'm trying not to show my emotions, but obviously that's not possible. And my mom, she comes over to me and she's like, Sasha, are you okay? And I'm just like, yeah, and I can't breathe, but she knows that it's really hard for me. And I knew that my mom was attached only in those 3 days of knowing her and seeing Alea. And so, you know, some other nurses and some other people came in, and they wanted to give me a couple hugs, and they wanted to take me out into the hallway and talk to me, and they're like, Sasha, you're doing a really good thing. You're giving parents who've been waiting to have a baby for years, you're giving them a chance to be parents. You know, you're really brave for giving your daughter up for adoption. I know this is really hard, but you're doing a good thing for her. And the whole time, I mean, like, I'm hearing them, but I'm not listening, because I knew in my heart that I didn't want to give Alea up for adoption. But the only reason why I had went through with the process was because my mom was the one who told me that she thinks it's best for me. So, you know, I'm just sobbing. I'm in the wheelchair, and they're wheeling me down to the car, and we're all walking together. And before the woman leaves, because the woman leaves before us, before the woman leaves, she's like, do you want to go see the baby one more time? And I'm sitting in the wheelchair crying, and I'm just like, yeah. And then she puts the car seat in front of me, and she lets me see, and I just start busting out crying. I can't help myself. And she's just like, it's okay, you're gonna be fine, you know, you're doing a really good thing, trust me, I will take good care of her. I'm not gonna do anything to harm her. She's gonna be in good hands. And I did believe her, I did, but it's just the fact that my own daughter was not coming home with me, and I had only spent 2 or 3 days with her in the hospital, and then she was just gonna be gone. So, but the thing is, you have 30 days after you sign the papers and the baby leaves for you to change your mind. So between those 30 days, you can change your mind and get her back any day. So it's a couple days after I came home from the hospital, and I'm telling my mom, I'm just like, Mom, I don't think I can do this. I just think I want her back. And she's like, well, you're gonna have to talk to your dad, because he's the one gonna be buying all this stuff. And that same day, I'm pretty sure it's that same day, and my dad had left to go somewhere while me and my mom were talking. And like an hour or so later, he comes home with all these other things. He comes home with a car seat, a car base, well, 2 car bases, a car seat, a stroller. He comes home with all these things, a diaper pail. It was a lot. You know, once he came in that house with all those things, I knew there was no turning back, and I was actually happy about that he went out and bought those things without even asking me, because he knew how I felt and he knew I was gonna want her back. So, you know, me and my mom and my dad, we have a sit down and we talk. And he was like, Sasha, why didn't you come to me and ask me about what I think that you should do? And I was like, oh, I thought that you guys were both on the same page. I thought that you and my mom were both wanting me to give her up for adoption. And he was like, no, you never wanted to come to me and ask me what I thought. And he was like, Sasha, if I was in your position, I would keep the baby. And if you would have came to me and asked me that, I would have told you. But, you know, I don't really talk to my dad. I don't really ask him nothing. That's why I didn't come ask him anything, because our relationship wasn't good. He told me, he was like, Sasha, if I was a 15-year-old girl who got pregnant and gave birth, I would want to keep her, because I know that I would regret it and I would want her back, and I would, you know, I knew that that would just be the wrong decision. So he was like, Sasha, from the very beginning when I found out that you were pregnant, I knew you wasn't going to give her up for adoption, and I knew you was going to keep her. But he didn't tell me that, though. He just let me go on with the adoption process. He let me go all those months signing papers and meeting up with the adoption parents, when he knew all along that I was going to take her back, or that I was going to keep her. So that's basically what happened. And then my mom texted the person from the adoption agency, and she was like, oh yeah, Sasha wants her back. And she was like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. I'll just let the adopted parents know. And I felt really bad, because I didn't want to just get their hopes up like that and just be like, oh, you know, I said that I was going to let you adopt my child, and now I changed my mind, because I know that they wanted to have a child for many years, and I just felt like I just ruined their dreams, because they were so close. So a couple days later, you know, we go meet up halfway to the woman at the adoption agency, and also the woman who had Alea, the woman who was taking care of Alea, also showed up with a car seat and everything. And she, you know, the clothes, she gave us some clothes, you know, and everything. She gave us back, and she was like, you're gonna be a really good mom, you know, I'm proud of you, da 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 da. And I was apologizing to the woman at the agency, because I felt like I totally wasted her time. And she was like, no, that's fine, you know, parents do that all the time. Parents want to go through the adoption agency and then later decide that they want to be a chance at being a parent. And she was like, it's totally fine, you know, I'll just let the people at the adoption agency know. And so that was the day that we took Alea home, and I was just so happy. I was like, yes, I have my baby back, you know, I missed her so much. And my mom was like, Sasha, when she didn't come home with us, I was crying so bad, you know, I just couldn't breathe. Your dad was just like, let it all out. And she was crying in front of my dad, and he was like, you know, it's for the best, because I had already made the decision. Even though he knew I was gonna get her back, he was like, you know, it's for the best, just let it all out. I know you miss her. And it was just kind of crazy. It was just like a bumpy road, you know, going through all of those emotions and doing all of that, and it was just crazy. So I mean, that's my labor and delivery story, but also / adoption story. And I mean, don't ever let somebody else tell you what you should do with your baby. Don't ever let somebody say you should give her up for adoption, him or her. Don't ever let anybody say you should abort your baby. Don't ever let anybody tell you how to raise your baby, because that's your child. Do what you feel, because even though my mom convinced me to give her up for adoption, I knew that's not what I wanted to do. And in the end, I ended up taking her back because I needed her. I wanted her. So I mean, that was my decision, and I live by it, I stand by it, and I don't regret keeping Alea. But what I do regret is even thinking about aborting her, or even thinking about giving her up for adoption, because she's my baby. She would have wanted to know who I was, and it would just been, if I would have went through all of that and went down that road, it would have just been bad. I just know it would have been horrible. So that's basically the story on that. And I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next video.